Warning: this episode contains details that some listeners may find disturbing. According to legend, in the late 1980s or early 90s, a VHS tape was making its way through tight circles of people that seek out the strange, sometimes scary, and provocative media. On this particular tape was footage of a young man with a long ponytail and a leather jacket. He stared at the camera and held a human skull. Over the next 26 minutes, he delivered a macabre tutorial on how to dig up graves, clean bones, and sell them for a profit. The skull he holds appears disturbingly real, complete with dental implants and bits of decaying tissue and hair. The video later surfaced in a bootleg anthology movie called Ensuring Your Place in Hell Volume 1, alongside 3 other shock segments. It remained largely unknown, though, until 2014, when a copy of it hit the internet and ignited debate. Was the video real? Or was it a hoax? Was the skull real? And who is the young man on camera?
It's like that, okay. So when the body decomposes, it's like long like that, okay? It all rots out in a flat line, almost, so you can't see it, okay? See the top usually has teeth, but the bottom is sometimes hard to find, okay? Because it's usually out like that.
This is a study of strange. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me today is an old guest, a common reoccurrence.
I mean, I'm not old. I mean, I don't feel old, but I feel like I was a guest that was on earlier, but age-wise, I'm still young at heart.
This is Bill Whirity, a filmmaker, a writer, a producer. He now has, well, here, I'm going to let you explain it. Talk to us about your YouTube show and social media, all the stuff you're doing now.
Yeah. So while we're waiting for our films to get made, I revived my old YouTube channel, The Geek Garage, and me and my now wife, Andrea, are running that. We make costumes, props, cosplay, all kinds of stuff from, just nerdy movie things that we build in the garage. And we teach people how to do professional level kind of film industry techniques for doing these things. So yeah, we want to make it accessible for everybody.
It's a great channel. It honestly really is. I don't build props, but I watch you and I'm like, oh, maybe I should go out and try to build a set right now out of cardboard and toothpaste. And you guys have a recent episode or series, I could even call it potentially. I don't know the right term, Bill.
I guess it's a episode, new video. I just call them videos. Yeah. The new video is we did a mashup costume, taking the Scream Ghostface character and mashing it up with the Springtrap or Spring Bonnie, depending on your view, from Five Nights at Freddy's. And the connection there is they're both characters, villains, played by Matthew Lillard, who's also in our video. So yeah, definitely check that out if you're interested in building nerdy things, or if you're just a fan of Matthew Lillard, because he's in it a bunch and he's just a gem of a
and he's awesome. Yeah, so that's Geek Garage. I'll have links in the show notes, but there is a reason I had you talk about this up top, Bill, and that is because today we're talking about the internet mystery / VHS / DVD mystery, grave robbing for morons. And in that video, someone explains how to rob graves and get the bones, turn the bones into something you can sell. And because you have experience as a filmmaker building props, building your own things, I thought you would have a really interesting point of view on this, because we can talk about the bones in this video and try to dissect them a little bit, as people online have already done. But I think you're going to have a very interesting angle on it. So let's wait before you share your information or opinion about the bones. We'll get into that later in the story. So let me give some context and background here to the audience. In the 80s or 90s, it was in vogue for a niche audience to find and watch obscure movies, shock films, disturbing, weird indie movies, things like Faces of Death, Traces of Death, Cannibal Holocaust. All of these kind of fit this niche audience. And finding those movies, I don't know if you remember, Bill, but like you'd hear stories about movies like this and you'd try to find them. You couldn't always find them. You'd have to find them in some weird video store or garage sale.
Yeah, they basically went viral before there was any sort of online streaming YouTube thing. It was just passed around on VHS tapes. There was like these fabled things. Even South Park kind of started that way. There was that Spirit of Christmas tape that they did as a
Yeah,
demo that
yeah.
floated around Hollywood and people heard about it or someone saw it and you're always trying to get a hold of it. Or even more recently, I remember hearing about like the Topher Grace cut of the Star Wars prequels where he mashed all three movies together. I'm like, I want to see this cut. There's always this like sort of like underbelly of the film industry of like things that are getting passed around, but obviously now with the internet things are readily available
Yeah,
a
but it
little bit
still
easier.
fits this. I'm just gonna, for lack of a better term, like it fits the same genre or vibe when you hear these stories of
Yeah,
interesting internet mysteries or strange videos on YouTube or Reddit or whatever. It's still like that's the new angle of that world. It's just before it
yeah,
had to be even more niche and small because you had to like physically find a tape or a DVD.
absolutely. It's like the original found footage. It's like that's why probably Blair
Yeah.
Witch took off so big when it did. Was this was like something everyone heard about or knew about, and then when it's like, oh wow, now there's one of these actually in theaters, everyone had to go see it.
You've seen the video,
I
and
just
I'm
I just watched it yesterday for the first time. You're the one that
nice.
introduced me to this. I was, but yeah, definitely. I didn't hear about this growing up, which is really interesting because it feels like something that we would have heard about. But yeah, I was like immediately taken back to being a kid and hearing about these tapes, or like you said, Faces of Death, stuff like that. Where you're just like, oh my god, should I be watching this kind of thing? But yeah. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah, and the mystery of it is real, and because there's like multiple layers to this mystery. The mystery is, a, is this really a grave robber? Did this kid really go out and rob a grave? Is the information he's giving correct and real, or is the skull real? And also, there's also a mystery of who this person is. No
Hmm.
one's really been able to 100% confirm and identify the person in the video, which I find fascinating now that it's become an internet video that's been passed around. I find it really interesting that there's not 100% confirmation of who is in the video. I have some theories. My theories literally have shifted all week. So you're hearing it fresh because I have a little
Great.
bit of a new take today. Tomorrow I might have a different opinion. Um, so yeah, I'll give you a little more of this story behind this video. The film is approximately 26 minutes long. It shows a young man with a ponytail. He has a speech impediment. He calls himself Anthony. And yeah, the speech impediment, by the way, adds to the kind of weirdness of the video because he has a
Yeah,
stutter.
definitely.
And he's holding a human skull, and he's giving graphic instructions about how to dig up graves and even like clean the bones and stuff. And he's covered in dirt. It looks like he either has a scar or dirt on his face. It's because it's VHS, it's kind of hard to see the details.
Hmm.
And there's bits of old hair or skin on the skull, or at least, again, that's what it looks like, that's what he says.
Yeah, his hands
And
and fingers are really dirty.
they're super dirty. And he demonstrates about how to, like, here's how you take off the skull from the rest of the bone, here's how you get into coffins. And he also warns watchers not to drink before going grave robbing. Some good solid
Oh
advice.
yeah.
You want to have your wits about you.
Yeah, he
um
also gives you advice to make sure there's no witnesses. Meanwhile, there's a camera guy filming it, and then he talks about all the people that come with him as like lookouts and stuff. So his instructions are
exactly.
a little murky.
Indeed. And here I'm going to play a quote about
Ooh.
leaving no witnesses.
If you leave witnesses, sometimes you might like doing these things and everything. At the wall, somebody might see them and say, that was him, that was him, that was him. Never let anybody point you out, right? Because if you get pointed out, it's very easy, all right? So, so let's say you robbed the 5 graves, all right? All right, for the first one, you might be able, so you might get caught, all right? But if there's witnesses for the rest of them, you will get caught too. Why? Because they're gonna blame you for it, right? Because they caught you for this one, that means you most likely did the rest of them, and the judge will say it was you. Never leave witnesses. If you have to knock them out so that way they think it's a dream. It's best not to kill, but if it's necessary, do it.
So the tape is believed to have been recorded in or after 1987 because there is a VHS copy of Evil Dead 2 that's
Mhm.
visible for a very quick portion of the video.
Yeah, a lot
There's
of
also
internet
a
sleuths have been picking out little
yeah,
details to kind of carbon date this, so to speak.
exactly. There's also a Fangoria Movie Effects magazine which came out, again, internet sleuths have pointed this out, 1989. So it's definitely 1989 or after. I think it's sort of early 90s myself. There have been some people that have theorized that this was made later, like late 90s or early 2000s, and just used an older camcorder to do it for an
Okay.
effect. But I think it's early 90s. Like it's not like they put a lot of money behind this thing. It's, there's because the clothes, the tech, you see like a stereo, a turntable in the background, like that kind of stuff. All of that's
Yeah.
late 80s, early 90s tech.
And that's always the hard thing, is that like when you are in those zones where everything is so close to each other, like, depending on, this person's household, if they have a lot of income, sometimes you just have a lot of things sitting around that are older. That's not necessarily a key indicator. Um, that's why a lot of times in movies, when you see an 80s movie, if you're like, I'm thinking of this from a production design standpoint. If you're designing like a kid's bedroom or a basement, Stranger Things is a perfect example. When you
Mm,
look at some of the basements set pieces in Stranger Things, it's actually a lot of carryover 70s stuff, because people weren't affording and buying the most newest 80s thing. They had all this carryover leftover furniture. They would get new furniture upstairs and then throw all the old furniture in the basement. We all, in the
right.
Midwest, we always have like the second fridge in the garage. So you have this outdated fridge out there and then the new one in the kitchen. So this stuff could have just been things that were laying around. And yeah, we could have been very late 90s for all we know. And they're just using old equipment.
I even have a DVD player in my living room. My son
Yeah.
doesn't know what a DVD player is, yet we have a DVD player right underneath the TV. So there is a carryover from these kind of things. And talk to me a little bit as a filmmaker when you look at this. There is this lo-fi VHS camcorder
Mhm.
aspect to it that I think feeds and fuels the mystery and the odd, strange, scary vibe of this video. But talk to me about the vibe, the look, what kind of like how the image is kind of degraded because of what it was shot on, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's something. I mean, I love the VHS look. We shot on those growing up as kids. That's how we made all of our movies. Even when I did my more recent movie, not recent now, it's still older. That was like 2008. But we did the Misinventions of Milo Weatherby, and we had this fun little segment at the end where the kids are teaching a science experiment, and we used a VHS camcorder because the idea was that the kids were filming this in the garage themselves. So we wanted it to feel a little bit more homemade, which is exactly what this does. It feels very
Yeah.
homemade. Obviously, the fact that they're using VHS makes the footage lower quality and grainier, which if you are faking a video hides a lot of the detail that would be giveaways to like what's real and what's fake. uh, Kind of reminds me of when me and my buddy did this other fake video where when the final Harry Potter book was coming out, we did this fake, pretending to be Borders employees, like reading from the original book. Like, we went in the back room and like opened it up early and put it online, and it went viral like crazy. It was like all over the place. But we shot it on a lower res camera to hide the fact that the fake Borders employee badges, and like when we were showing our fake copyright page, like all that stuff, like the graininess made it a little bit harder to detect if it was real or not. And it's funny, it wound up on like Inside Edition, and I think like CNN people saw that video on because they thought it was real and that we'd leaked information. But that's the thing, is like you can't really tell because it's so grainy, but it has all like the standard fingerprints of footage from that area of like the graininess. Now, the one thing I do notice is it cuts to, let me play this again from the beginning, because it starts on like a blue frame, and I'm trying to remember because when we were kids, there's a distinct like crossover reference point of like when camcorders went from recording static to
Mhm.
when like they were doing more of a blue frame. Like if you were recording something with a VCR and there was no signal, like later equipment used like that blue screen where it's just a solid color. But earlier 80s stuff, I always remember you'd be recording maybe like some noise or just like white noise static.
Right. Well,
Um,
there's a issue with that though, and that's I think the copies everybody sees online are from the DVD ripoffs, which we'll talk about in a minute.
oh,
So
okay,
I'm
that's a
not
good point.
sure
Okay.
that's actually a perfect
Oh, good.
clue
That's
to
good to
look at.
know. So
But it's
this has
something I
been on
didn't think
DVD
about.
at some point. Okay.
Yes, yeah. So I will chat about that. In fact, this is a
Yeah.
nice way to talk about how this video even got out and why it started to become a mystery of
Hmm.
sorts. We've already talked about how these indie kind of shock movies used to be passed around. Some of them legit productions, but still like low budget, or some weird homemade things like
Yeah.
this one. So, Grave Robbing for Morons, as far as we can tell, appeared on a anthology movie called Ensuring Your Place in Hell Volume 1. There is some debate online because a lot of information about this video comes from Reddit, so you can't trust everything fully and it gets confusing. Some people claim it's in Volume 2. From what I can tell is that it actually is Volume 1 and a Volume 2 has never been found. It contained 3 other short films. Grave Robbing for Morons was first at 26 minutes. The second was Mortuary of the Dead, which shows some young men exploring a mortuary and there's dismembered bodies and things like that. The third one was Cooking with Hut Bakko, which is just kind of a satirical cooking show by a filmmaker named Huck Batko, which is hard for me to say. It's really funny though. And he is actually a filmmaker. And then the fourth one is Exploding Varmints, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's people going out and blowing up varmints. All
geez.
3 of those, there is some debate, but for the most part, I think all 3 of those after Grave Robbing for Morons are fake. They're all fictional.
Okay.
And I think that's important to think about and note when we talk about theories later, because Cooking with Huck Batko, that guy became a screenwriter. The mortuary thing, I think, is completely fake. Even Exploding Varmints, I also think is fake. I think it's trying to be sort of over the top funny.
Okay.
And I think they're all fake. Although, again, a few of those, there is some debate about all of them being fake, but I think they are. But Grave Robbing for Morons is the one that most people cannot figure out.
Okay.
And I think it's because it's a combination of all the different things. It's just this young guy who looks to be in his teens or early 20s talking about robbing a grave and holding this very real looking skull. And there's some other bones and there's like a bag of dirt underneath him, which I imagine is where the skull came from. And no one's been able to quite figure that out. So according to a researcher and writer and podcaster, a guy named Jesse Pollock, he's been a great source for myself and some other people that have researched this because he really did a deep dive for his own work into this video. And he has found some evidence, or at least people talking about the fact that this was passed around in these VHS trading circles in New York in the either late 80s or early 90s. And then there apparently was an anthology, like I just mentioned, that this was a part of. The anthology then became a DVD anthology in the early 2000s. And a gentleman who had a video store found it in Chicago, of all places. You're from Chicago. Maybe you made this, or made the anthology. But he was at a horror convention. He found the anthology. He bought it. He doesn't remember who he bought it from. And then he put it on, or someone connected to him put it on this anthology DVD, Ensuring Your Place in Hell, which came out in the later 2000s. And that is how it started to get passed around. However, it didn't become a big deal until about 2014 when it was uploaded to YouTube. And then even then, it still took a couple of years before this really became a bit of a viral internet mystery. So a lot of what I just said, it's a lot to kind of take in. And again, a lot of information comes from Reddit, so take everything with a grain of salt. But it does seem like the life story of this is, hey, it was filmed late 80s, early 90s, became part of a anthology on VHS. And then in the early 2000s, someone put that on a DVD. And then that DVD that was then put on another DVD around 2007, 8, or 9, which then went around and then it was put on YouTube. So it's been passed around with these interesting anthologies. And I don't think there's copyright on any of that. So I think people are just bootlegging it, putting it out and trying to sell some DVDs.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the questions I had. I don't know if you want to dive in, where do you want to dive in first? But like, I'm so torn because I'm like, do I want to put on my skeptical hat and just pick this thing apart, or do I want to believe it, sort of thing. So I guess I'll go from the skeptical part first, and we'll talk about, the sort of potential holes in it.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, first and foremost, as you're saying, it's on this compilation where every other video is clearly fake, right? So there's that's like a red flag right there. Now, has anyone talked to the filmmaker? What was his name that did the cooking one, who later you said became a screenwriter?
That is a good question. I think this guy Jesse Pollock did. Okay. I could be wrong. I could be wrong about that. And honestly, I should email him. In fact, I'm going to email.
Because I'm curious if that guy was approached, like to put his video on the anthology, or back then was it just like, oh, someone's putting these things together like a mixtape and
Yeah,
they're
was
not
it
getting the
stolen from
rights?
somewhere and just
Yeah,
put on it? Like, he may not have had any control about that, it could have
yeah,
been
because if
taken from
he might
somewhere.
have the key of like, okay, who put this thing together? If they reached
Yeah,
out to him for like an original copy or something, and then that might lead to whoever the original creator of
yeah.
that video was. Yeah, I guess okay. Another point would be, thinking about the motivation of the video. At that time, when it's hard to circulate this stuff around, what is Anthony's reason for recording himself giving these instructions to other people, and how is he planning to get that out to other people, and why was he not worried that this would lead back to him and he would get like arrested or be in some sort of trouble? Obviously he didn't really have to worry about getting tracked down because nobody knows who he is to this day, so he apparently that is not really that much of an issue. So evading the police or at least online sleuths was successful. But yeah, but like, what is the motivation of it? Another thing for me that really stuck out was the way the video starts. It almost cuts in the middle.
Yeah.
So it's like, where's the intro? Where's the start? It
Where's
kind
the
of comes
intro?
in mid sentence while he's already like in the middle of showing off the skull. So is that like for effect? Was it just you know, back then, sometimes a lot of people won't realize this. When you hit record on a VHS camcorder, it would take a second for the motor to start the tape up. So there was always this delay. So as a kid, when we were shooting stuff, a lot of times we'd notice the beginning and end of our shots would get clipped and you'd be
Yep.
missing a portion. And obviously you wouldn't know that till after you went and rewound the tape and played it back. And it's a whole process. So maybe it was just, operator error and they started recording and you're missing the little
Mhm.
2-second intro. But those were some things that immediately stuck out to me as like, oh, I got to make note of that because that's kind of interesting.
It is interesting, and pretty sure I sent you the link that is the longest version of it, because there is a
Mhm.
version out there that starts even a little later.
Okay.
But yeah, it does seem to start right in on it, and that could be operational error, or it could be just the bootleg nature of this video.
Yeah.
In fact, let me read a quote here because I initially had this idea that what if this wasn't actually passed around in VHS circles? What if that's just what people are saying now, and so everybody believes
Yeah.
it because it's that echoed chamber of people having these theories online, and people start to take that as fact? What if it
Mhm.
really was just a random video some friends made, some teenagers trying to be provocative and whatever, and have some fun one night, and then later someone found it and put it on this anthology as a DVD? Like, I had that thought, but then there is this quote. Again, take everything with a grain of salt because it comes from online, but this is a quote from a Reddit user named TrainingYam3263 on one of the many Reddit topics about this video. He says, "I can confirm that the video dates back to at least the early 90s, 100%. I seen this video back then. I was able to get my hands on the Ensure Your Place in Hell video VHS from a rental place called Video Hits in a smaller town outside of Pittsburgh. Long gone, of course. The other videos in the compilation, I believe, had 4 different stories. You can find them online, I'm fairly sure. And I'm sure this group already knows that. They were fake, but this one always seemed legit. But I seen this video, say, about 1991. I'm not exactly sure what year, but it's safe to say it was between 90, but no later than 93. 90% sure it was 1991. I love that he like keeps digging into when he saw
Yeah.
it. People that don't believe this video of more recent years are thinking this was filmed in the 80s, but I'd place money that it was filmed in the very early 90s, maybe 89, but it has a 1990 vibe all over it. It's an educated guess, but trust me, a very good one. So there you go. There's that quote. I don't know. I think because this is so informal and the way he's going back about the years, it makes me believe this guy. I do believe that he saw this
Yeah. It's
in the
almost
early
like the
90s.
comments are in the same believability of the video. It's like the roughness and the just scattered brainness of it almost like fits within that whole world of like, well, what if that's also fake and he's doing that on purpose to make you feel like he's actually trying to pull this memory out. Yeah,
Right.
it's just funny how this whole aura around this thing
Yeah.
is
But
not
that's,
limited just to the tape.
and that I think is part of this motivation factor of like, why did you make this video? Because back then, without YouTube, without the internet, you're either making it for yourself to have fun with friends. You and I both made movies with friends at that
Yeah.
time period. Or was it, hey, there is somebody that's going to pass this around to people that, hey, they might be able to help us. Maybe we'll go in business. Like, that could be
Yeah,
a
make some
motivation
money
as
off of
well.
it. Probably the same circles where he's claiming like he grave robs these bones and then sells them. So maybe in that circle, he's planning to sell the tape as an instructional, like to make additional money without having to do more work.
Maybe, but that's one of the big things that I think we'll circle around to probably over and over again, which is he's making this video and he keeps mentioning, don't have witnesses, don't use your real name. We better not use our last names. He says at one point, don't let anybody see. He's like, don't take pictures, don't make videos, but you're,
Yeah.
and I think he even
You're
says,
making a
like we're
video.
doing now. So it's like, there is this amateurish, almost like, hey, we're just teenagers having fun, being cool and we're bad kind of vibe,
Yeah.
where they're just he's contradicting himself, or if he's with a group of people, there is someone filming him. He mentions a bunch of people, which we'll talk about soon. It's like there is this skeptic nature to it because you're literally doing the opposite of what you're advising people to
People to
do.
do. Yeah.
But again, also teenagers are stupid. So
That's
he
true.
could be giving that advice as sincere advice, and he could be robbing graves just for fun because he's a crazy teenager.
Yeah. And
And
probably not the brightest if you're robbing
yeah,
graves. Let's be honest. Like, that's
yeah,
not a smart
absolutely.
life decision.
So let me give a little
Really quick,
background.
I have one
Yeah,
question before we move on, because you mentioned, people saying, "Oh, I remember this VHS tape." Obviously, that guy said he got it from a video store. Now, when Faces of Death came out, I remember those tapes in the video store. That was like put out and distributed. There was actual cases, like VHS, like actual box case is what I'm talking about. So there was cover art, there was all that stuff. Did this have that? Have you seen any pictures of actual VHS copies that people claim are the real deal? Like, was there a cover, or was it all bootleg, like in a just blank, VHS cover with like a sticker handwritten, with that volume 1 on it? Like,
that is a great question. And if any listeners can actually confirm a VHS compilation anthology of this, reach out to me at studyofstrange@gmail.com. I have not seen artwork because I can only find artwork for the DVDs that came later. In terms of it
okay,
being on a VHS in the 90s, I have not seen any
yeah,
imagery about that. And in fact, that's again what one of my first theories was. It was never a VHS anthology. It just became later. But if
mm,
we believe this commenter on YouTube and other sort of anecdotal stories, it was out there. But I've never seen imagery for the VHS, only the
yeah.
DVD. So there are some other images for DVD versions of it.
Yeah, and nowadays
Um,
it's so easy to make, fake ones. Like, there's all those like
Absolutely.
throwback ones that like I Am Spielberg does and stuff like that. So
Yep.
it's like, even if you get a picture now, it's like, well, was this created now and to build
Yeah.
this mythos out, or is it a legit old copy? But I feel like there has to be
Yeah.
some copies floating around somewhere with all the VHS collectors these days.
Yeah, someone's got it in a basement. If it
Yeah,
existed, it's out there somewhere, and that's part of
yeah,
the mystery because no one has come forward with a copy of the VHS
yeah,
at least that I've seen. So there are some other details we can start to pinpoint or look at to try to deduce or come up with a theory or answers to these questions. One is that the host, I'm going to call him a host of the video. He is young, teens, early 20s at the oldest. It's believed to be in New York because of his accent, also local cemeteries that he mentions, likely in Queens. He also mentions that they're going to go after Houdini's grave, which I believe is in Queens or Brooklyn.
mm, yeah,
Um, and yeah, so those are just some little details that I think are worth mentioning. The skull. Let's talk about the skull, Bill. Let's
yeah.
move
Let's talk
into
about it.
this because that's one of
Yeah,
the biggest things that makes people question if this is real or not. Because if it looked like a store-bought plastic skull, we wouldn't be talking about the video,
yeah,
but it looks real. And again, there's like weird little bits of either flesh or hair on it. It's dirty. He's dirty. I think it came from a bag of bones or dirt beneath him. You don't really
mhm,
always see the full thing in the video, but he does have this thing below him that looks like it's full of dirt and he kind of lifts it up. It also has teeth which come out, which are dentures. There's a lot of people that
yeah. He
don't
says
watch the
that.
whole video. Yeah. Some people don't watch the whole video and they're like, those teeth are fake, man. It's like, yeah, he says they're dentures. So talk to me about the skull. What did you notice about it? And does it look real to you?
Yeah, I mean, I have to obviously preface by saying I've never seen a real skull in person, other than at a museum that's been like cleaned up and prepared.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a museum, obviously they take care of it and stuff. So I haven't actually seen what one looks like. Most of my experience is what has been represented on TV and movies.
Hmm.
That being said, I mean, movie props look amazing. Obviously, even now, shows like Walking Dead and stuff, but even back in the day, like Indiana Jones, you look at, those movies and it's like the skulls and the props that they make there look very, very real. So from that regard, it's like, I feel like it's very easy to be able to make that for professionals. Now for someone like these kids, that's probably a lot harder of a task, especially back then, trying to get materials to do castings and forms. And I don't really know how they would go about that back then, because even when I was a kid in that era, trying to get materials and stuff and ordering, like online wasn't even a thing yet. So it was like finding catalogs or calling companies. It just seems like highly unlikely that they created this skull.
Yeah.
But that being said, yeah, I did some research, because I remember there was always the stories of like schools using real skeletons as their sort of biology class and stuff like that. So I looked up, I was like, when did they stop using real skulls and skeletons and switch over to like, the plastic sort of resin, copies? And it surprisingly, it went on for a long time. I think the real, big moment was, I think it was in, let me see, I think it was 1985 or so, when India passed a law to like stop exporting skulls, because I guess a lot of them came from India.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, but that was like in 85. And then later in, I think it was 2004 was when the UK passed some law. So, I mean, up until the late 20th century, classrooms still had human skulls and skeletons like hanging in the room. So there's a very good chance that they were able to find an actual skull. It's probably more likely back then, because it was so expensive to get the fake ones and it was so much cheaper. I mean, let's not forget the story famously in Poltergeist from 1982, where all the skeletons in that movie were real skeletons, again, because it was cheaper to find those skeletons than fake ones. So the skeletons you see at the end of that film are real. So my theory is, I think we are seeing a real skull. I just don't know if they grave robbed it, got it at like an antique store or through some other means, or like a school, that went out of business. Maybe they stole it from class. I don't know. It could have, there's a bunch of places they could have gotten it from. So I do feel like it's real. The one thing though that does stick out to me, and you've sort of mentioned this a couple of times, was they pull it out of this bag of dirt, and the skull looks very dirty and grimy. So my question is, and they don't really mention this, but when they're digging these up and grave robbing, are they going for really, really, really old skeletons that were, I feel, as far as I know, I feel like they always use caskets. So why is it so covered in dirt? It looks like it's been dug literally out of the dirt, as if you're finding fossils. It's so just caked and impacted with dirt. I'm trying to understand why it would be that versus being in a coffin and just decomposing and not covered in dirt. I don't know. That's where my brain went, because I figure like if you're digging it up, you're gonna get to the coffin, you got to break open the coffin, and then you're not gonna go bury it back in a bag of dirt to bring it home. Why carry the extra weight of a bag of dirt? So, yeah, that was the thing that stuck out to me, was how dirty all these bones
I'm
were.
so
And
glad you brought that up. I
it just
really
feels like a
am.
mistake
Yeah.
a teenager would make, of like, oh, we got to cover the bones with dirt so it looks like we
Well,
dug them up.
so that's one of my thoughts about this, and that is, I actually think it is a real skull. And there's a number of reasons why. One is, someone mentioned, again, internet sleuths, that there's a part of the, let me see if I can find it in my notes. One part of the skull has an elongated styloid process bone, also known as Eagle syndrome, a condition that can occur in human beings after they experience a throat injury. You wouldn't necessarily find that on a fake skull.
Oh,
Also,
wow.
the dentures, I think, seem to be very real. Like, he's got this dirty old looking skull and these clean, like, the dentures to me add some authenticity to it. I'm not saying he robbed a grave for that, because there are other ways to get these things. But I never see anybody talk about the bag of dirt and his hands being super dirty, because it almost looks like if I was putting on a play in high school and I was playing a grave robber, I'd be like, oh, let's dirty up my hands and whatever. But it's
Yeah.
like, if this is something you've already robbed, why are your hands all dirty? Why is it in a bag of dirt? Because you're talking that he does talk about coffins and breaking into the coffins. The skulls aren't going to be covered in dirt. The bones aren't going to
Yeah.
be covered in dirt. And then he talks about like putting it in a bag and carrying it. I think the dirt, to me, can easily be them trying to add that quote unquote authenticity with, like, we need to dirty it up, mix some mud and water and dirt, even the bits of what he calls hair or parts of skin, because of the VHS like low quality of it, that could just be like some mud caked on there when they dirtied
Yeah.
it up.
Easily.
So that's where I go to this, is like, and it's all due to that dirt. I'm like, the dirt is a way to hide some of the, the better looking parts of the skull to make it look a little more real. And if it is fake, I think it's a real skull, but if it is fake, that's also a way to kind of hide some of like the plasticky nature or whatever sort of material it may be made out of, which can be way too shiny.
Mhm.
So like let's dull it up a bit by putting it in dirt. So I'm glad you brought that up because I don't feel anybody talks about this bag of weird bones and dirt at his feet. It's like
Yeah,
that
that was the
the
biggest
skull
thing
was
to me.
obviously in there. So like, why is it dirty? Why is
Yeah,
it
and I
that
feel again,
dirty?
I feel like that's probably like the teenager mistake because, again, going back to that Harry Potter video we did so much research to make sure it was legit. Like even being dumb kids, you're like, I want to fool people into thinking this is real. You know, from photoshopping the copyright page to update a previous copyright page with the new ISBN number that's available online, making the fake cover because they released the cover. We even made like fake boxes in the back and wrapped it in saran wrap because that's what it looked like when they showed them coming off the book press and everything when all these like big newsreels and stuff were going. But we didn't actually have the boxes. We just had to print fake labels. So
Yeah.
we knew that the VHS, well, ours wasn't VHS. It was probably some sort of like, you know, digital tape,
DV.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, DV tape. Um, but we knew that would help hide some of these features. But again, I think the little hole in their plan was their teenage brains not remember, you know, thinking like, oh, we should, you know, we have to make these dirty to look like they've been dug up versus, but he does talk about, you know, like there's a part where he mentions depending how old the bones are, there might be skin, or maybe it was the cameraman chimed in. I'm trying to
Mm,
remember, but they talked about like, you know, how long ago they were buried and if there's going to be a skin that you have to peel off versus
yeah.
like
He
if the
does.
bones are all decayed. But yeah, the dirt was like the um, biggest kind of like thing I noticed. Because again, if they're trying to be very detail oriented, they could seek out and find a real skull from an old medical school or anywhere that, especially in New York with all those weird little shops and people reselling stuff. I'm sure there's some avenue to finding that. So that's to me again. I feel like it's real bones or at least the real skull, but everything around it just does something feels
Yeah,
not as
something feels a little
authentic.
weird. And he does mention that like you can go to magic shops and sell the skull for X amount of dollars, and that is specifically taken from a book called "Say You Love Satan" about it's a true crime
Mm.
book about a cultist named Ricky Casso, and there was some grave robbing in Ricky Casso's life. He did sell things and literally talks about selling it to a magic shop for X amount of dollars. So people bring that up as like a possible influence to whoever
Oh,
made the video to like, oh, gotta say this. And like, this is a thing that'll make it seem real. And he talks about
yeah.
like, I love that he takes like, he talks about a femur or an arm bone or something. Is like, if you can carve this into a necklace, you can get more money about it. Like, there's some interesting little like anecdotes in there that to me make it seem like someone's making something up, you know?
Yeah, there was also a point where I was thinking about like the you mentioned the dentures, and
Mhm.
it sort of has me thinking. This is where I go to the other side of the coin of like maybe it is actually real. Like,
Yeah.
would a medical school or any sort of place that you'd buy a real skull use a skull that had dentures because it would be incomplete, or because looking at them it's hard to actually tell if they're dentures, but if it is a medical one, is it maybe they made a device so you could take, you know how like a lot of times you can take those skeletons apart to see different pieces.
Mhm.
This is the plastic ones I'm referring to now, but maybe before that they had the ability to separate parts of the skull or bones and stuff so that students could actually get a feel for stuff. So are they dentures or is it just a skull that's been designed for a classroom to be able to remove some teeth for certain lessons where they have to look close? I've never obviously been to medical school, so I don't know what kind of lessons they teach. But yeah, that was one thing though in the column against it was like, would they have one with dentures in any of the scenarios I've described of acquiring a real
Yeah.
skull?
And I don't know, and I will say this is why my theory kind of shifts throughout almost every day. My theory is shifting on this. Um, but grave robbing is real. Like
Yes.
it does happen. And that goes into some of the theories that have been floating around and some allegations about suspects and what actually happened. And just because you're bringing that up, I feel like it's a nice way into this. So there
Yeah.
is one of the main theories.
The list of suspects.
The list of suspects starts off with a guy named Anthony, same name, Casamasima. And Anthony in the video even says, and brought to you like, it's my buddies and I, we're doing it, and I'm Anthony Casasa, and he has that stutter, and he never says the full name, and people think he's about to say Casamasima. Well, in the late 90s, the reason this guy is a suspect is in New York, Anthony Casamasima stole Tiffany windows, which I think are stained glass windows, and urns and other things from cemeteries. He was caught, and his home was filled with stolen items from the Salem Hills or Salem Fields and Cypress Hills Cemetery. This is one of the reasons why he's considered a suspect. I don't know if he ever robbed bones, but he was definitely robbing from cemeteries. The point against him, though, I'll quickly point out, a lot of people believe it's the same guy, but he was in his 40s in the 90s. He would have been too old, where the guy in the video is, I think, teens. So
yeah, definitely teens. Feels like
yeah.
high school kids. Like
and there
upper
are
end of high school.
There are some photos of Casamassima. It takes a little bit of finding, but you can find photos of them. They don't share the exact same facial features, so there are some look differences as well. There is another theory that's come up in recent years, but people debunk it pretty quickly, is a guy named Christopher Boucher, who's an independent filmmaker, and he was releasing bootleg copies of cult films. So he has this like connection to that world of cult films and bootleg films and things. The issue is that his name is pronounced Boucher, and Anthony in the video, Grave Robbing for Morons, mentions a Bucci, or I think he says Poochie, but people kind of stretched it to say Bucci.
I have a friend named Poochie too, so I was going to text and be like, "You got any family members with some bones in their house?
Hey Poochie, did you do this?" But no, this.
Well, I don't want to say his name, but
oh yeah. So anyway, there's a Christopher Boucher, and also Boucher would be, I think he would have been like a kid when the video was made, so he was not part of this group of grave robbing. Which, just to clarify, Anthony in the video says he like thanks people. So he thanks the camera guy, he thanks people that he's with a team, because he's like, you gotta have a team, you gotta have lookouts and help, and but things are heavy. So he like thanks his team, and that's when he mentions this Poochie guy. There's a story that's been floating around. I think it started with a YouTube comment that claims a man, a Red Hook bootlegger named Screws, was selling bones and later died by suicide. There, however, is no record of such a person. There's no police records for a guy with the similar name or in the similar area that committed suicide. So it's become a bit of like an urban legend on this mystery online. There are other real grave robbers, such as Craig Bradley, who is from New York, same area. He would use a crowbar and hammer to break open mausoleums in the mid-90s. He removed skulls. He was arrested, fined, served time, and then he was later rearrested, but I think for something unrelated to the grave robbing. But it does show that this is real. Like, this is actually really going on and in that area. And there were some teenagers in 2003, three teenagers in Long Island. They broke into Cedar Grove Cemetery. They took a skeleton from the cemetery to a party. I'm not bringing them up as suspects. I'm just saying these things do happen. So this is where I debate like the whole video is a hoax, or could these people really have robbed a grave and been like, dude, let's like make a video about it, man? Like, that's like, there is some possibility that they were doing this. So there is a theory that I don't see mentioned very often that's kind of become part of the lore of this story. And it's from a commenter on YouTube, but it caught my attention. It is obviously all anecdotal, but I do like this story. So apparently there's a guy named Jonathan Herrera from the New York area, from where we think this video was made, who was around the same age as the people in the video. He was either an illegal resident of the USA, or he was legal, but his parents weren't legal, something like that. I think his family was from Ecuador, again, so the commenter says. And he was just a bit disturbed individual. And he used to hang out in graveyards, and no one knew what he was actually doing in those graveyards. But that was like part of the thing around the kids in school, or like, why is he hanging out in graveyards? Yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up because it was like one of these local stories. Like, there's a dude named Jonathan Herrera that like was super weird and would bring things from graveyards and would like talk about robbing graves. So there's these that it just, again, it adds to the legend of this.
Absolutely,
because it's kind of like, how do you do this? Now, I'm going to
But
talk
also,
about.
I wonder, is there any reports? Like, can they go back and see where the reports of during this sort of early '90s period, because we know the rough time period, we know the rough area, I mean, New York. So can they go and check if there were any police reports of graves being dug up? Because based on these kids, I'm guessing when they dig up a grave, even if they are being cautious and putting the dirt back and everything. I feel like they're going to just try to get out of there as soon as possible, and they're leaving
Absolutely.
an open
Yeah.
hole.
Yeah.
So that would get reported. But even if they do cover it back up, the groundskeeper is going to notice fresh dirt being dug up,
Yeah.
and grass not being there. So is there reports that they can cross-reference, especially with knowing someone that had dentures, to try to like pinpoint who this was? I feel like there's got to be some sort of sleuthing avenue
There,
for that.
yeah, the simple answer is yes, and people have, and no one's
Okay.
been able to quite get the exact details of this video to line up with anything that's found so far. It is hard. I know it's weird to say like the 90s were not that long ago. It's modern day. Everything was getting digitized starting around then, but it still is actually hard to go through those kind of records now.
Okay.
But most of the stuff, and I don't have it all in my notes today just because we'd have a 4-hour long episode, but there are people that have gone into police reports and they have found grave robbing, but they're usually tied to somebody being caught. There is
Okay.
not a lot of reports about just like, oh, this gravesite was found dug up and left.
Yeah.
They usually catch the people, which is actually a good sign.
That's great.
But there are some things. But yeah, nothing is quite lined up in anybody's research yet,
Hmm.
specifically with the dentures of these people in the video, or the person in the video and the people he talks about. There is a suspect that is my favorite suspect, if I'm to believe that there is a suspect, because again, I'm waffling on all of this. It's a gentleman named Matthias Frias, and he was a real grave robber. And in 1991, he was about 21, 22, somewhere in there. And he was later described as being homeless for most of this time in his early 20s. He was convicted of stealing a skull from the bus mausoleum at Cypress Hills Cemetery in Queens. He was arrested for taking 4 more skulls from another Brooklyn cemetery. And he told police that he would clean the skulls in his mother's backyard in Woodhaven, and then he would sell them. He was charged with burglary, larceny, body stealing, probably a handful of other things. And there's rumors that he would sell them to people that were doing sort of occult rituals for these things, although I cannot confirm that they were used for occult rituals. He was also, I think recently or within the last 10 years, I forgot to write down the year, but he was arrested in Vermont for unrelated offenses. And I've looked him up. I've seen pictures. It's not an exact match, but it is close. He's much older in photos that I've found than the kid in the video, but there are some similarities. So I think it's an interesting, again, that's just me speculating. I have no evidence to point to the matter. He may not be, and I'm still leaning to this thing being more of a hoax anyway.
Yeah.
But out of all the people I've seen brought up online, he's the one that I think connects more closely.
The most dots connect there.
And if nothing else, he also shows again that grave robbing really is happening. And that ties into how we can kind of surmise the video, which is it's still a mystery. I still lean to it being a hoax, but part of me does think that, in fact, let me just even be more specific, Bill, because this is where my waffling through the week goes.
Yeah.
Where I am today, I think this kid and his friends robbed a grave. I think they did.
So now you're on the...
I'm on the grave robbing side. I wasn't yesterday, and I may not be tomorrow. Today, I think they robbed a grave. Just being stupid teenagers.
What has swayed you from yesterday that now makes you feel more confident that it's real?
I think because I've been reading about grave robbing, like trying to find specifics in the records like you talked about, and finding all these other stories, especially on Long Island. Like it's coming up a lot. And I could just see teenagers playing around in a graveyard and being like, hey dude, this thing's recently dug up, or no one's paid attention to this back corner over here. Let's see what happens. And they dug it up. And they were like, dude, let's make a video, and like we're gonna be badass and claim we do this all the time, and like just talk about it. And Anthony kind of contradicts himself in the video. He's like, I've been doing this for a while, and he's giving all this advice about how to clean skin, and you want older graves, at least 60 years or older. Don't do a young one, because then you got skin and it's gross and weird. But then he also mentions this is his second one. And which could mean just like the skull he's holding was his second one and he's done more, or it could mean this is my second one and he's contradicting himself because he's just kind of making it up.
Yeah.
And so there are these conflicting things that he mentions, but I do think the bones are real. I think the dentures are an interesting aspect of it. the dirt could still be used to like, oh, let's dirty it up so people believe it even more. Or it's just they were in haste and they just threw a bunch of stuff in a bag and there's dirt and whatever. Like that can happen too. So I personally believe they broke into some grave, they robbed some bones, and then they were just like, dude, let's make a fucking video. We're so badass. And they thought because of the era it's in, no one's ever gonna see this. I may share it with a
Yeah,
friend or whatever, but like besides a friend and a friend's friend, no one's ever gonna see this video, and we're just going to be maybe we'll share it around school. I don't know. Like, so they just did this thing. So that's where I am now. I think they really
yeah,
robbed a grave. I don't think they were prolific. And I don't actually, as much as I said Mattias Frias is my favorite suspect, that's if I believe it's anybody that's been found. I don't necessarily think it's him. I think this Anthony guy could have been somebody else. But this could have been the end. Maybe they never robbed another grave again. I just made this fun video one night for a weekend fun time. So that's where I am. But again, tomorrow I may be
could be
different. But yeah, give
might
me
be
your
different.
give me your
Yeah,
thoughts.
I'm still so torn because again, like you make one copy, you're showing it just to friends. I mean, we have a ton of, videos like that and they don't necessarily spread. So it's like people have to be making copies and distributing them for it to last this long to get to where we are today. Um, is very interesting. Also, I just remember being a kid and like, I mean, obviously depends on the neighborhood you grew up, but I feel like everyone knew what everyone was doing. So if one person was talking about this, rumors would spread at school. Some kid's going to talk, an adult's going to get, notified, and someone's going to get in trouble. And I don't know. Yeah, so maybe that's why they stopped because they did get caught, and the parents just didn't want other people to know about it, so they got
Yeah,
punished or
yeah.
whatever. Um, but it's harder if you like. I do feel like the skull and bones are real. Again, the source of those could have come from somewhere else. But again, being kids, the easiest solution is for them. It's probably easier for them to dig up a corpse than to go source it from antique stores or find a medical school that's
Yeah.
closing.
Yeah.
But again, you never know. Someone's got a weird uncle who used to be a teacher and has a box of stuff in his basement. Obviously, they're horror fans because you've got the Evil Dead, you've got the Fangoria magazine. So sometimes you might just come up with this idea to like, hey, let's shoot this funny thing. And found footage and faking stuff to be real was not out of the ordinary back then. I mean, Cannibal Holocaust goes back further than that. And that was a big, it kind of almost like one of the first, like where people were like, oh, is this real?
Oh my
Is
God,
this a
is it
real
real?
thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like maybe they were trying to mimic that. Or maybe they just did a stupid thing and were videotaping. We've done a lot of things when I look back and we were filming like pranks and, things now that
Yeah.
would wind up on, Jackass or Borat. And I was like, oh, some of those are probably things we shouldn't have filmed us, doing. But luckily for us, we couldn't afford to buy new tapes. So we just always would tape over the previous thing that we shot to keep making new stuff. And sadly, we lost a lot of those videos, but it might be for the best, you never know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a very interesting. I just wish that somebody could track down like who this person was. Maybe they could use AI to upres the video and get some other clues in the background because now you're seeing a lot of things where it's able to sort of analyze and take VHS footage and make it look, HD or better. But now, then again, the legitimacy of that because it's obviously making up information.
It's making up
to fill in.
information. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's hard to tell, but yeah, I feel like someone would have had to recognize that kid. I mean, he reminds me of like Lucas Haas, that one actor. Or
Yeah.
there's another actor when I was watching it last night that reminded me of, but today when I was looking at him, yeah, I keep thinking of like Lucas Haas, and then the stutter feels so real. So
Oh, the stutter's definitely real. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
like knowing the look of that kid, that stutter, it's like how has nobody sort of ID'd him? Especially, I mean, again, this isn't mainstream. This hasn't like blown up to where a lot of people are seeing it. If there was like a Netflix documentary on this, someone at home would probably be like,
Someone would
"I
find
grew up
it.
with
Yeah.
that kid. I need to go
Yeah.
like comment on this." But it's still sort of in that modern day version of what it was in the 90s where it's like circulating underground. Like, again, I didn't know about this until you sent it to me yesterday. And this feels like something that definitely would come across my desk earlier with all the weird stuff friends always send me.
Yeah.
But I didn't even know about it. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm just so torn. I guess the only definitive thing I could say is I feel like the skull is real, especially with the dentures. That seems like a whole other. I'd probably have to do a little bit more digging and see if skulls back then did have removable parts for classroom teachings that were made stuff easier to see certain things. But yeah, as far as the like, if they actually did the grave robbing, I wouldn't put it past them. Like if there was anyone that did seem like they would do that, it does feel like these kids. And being kids, I think, you're just not really thinking I shouldn't be filming this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And also all the contradictory stuff of like, don't let any witnesses see you, but I'm going to videotape this
I'm
and
going to
have a
videotape the
bunch
whole
of
thing.
and bring a bunch of friends. Yeah. So, I mean, all those things check out to it being legit. I sent it to our mutual friend, Tony, because this is stuff that me and him love sharing back and forth. And immediately he's like, dude, what is this? I'm started watching this. Like, what am I watching right now? And I'm like, he's like, I think, and we started talking about if it's real or not. He's like, I 100% think this is real. So yeah, I don't know. I guess as of right now, I'm leaning towards probably real, but then there's always the other side of me that's like, yeah, but it was on that tape with all the other fake ones.
Yeah, you
And
got to
Blair
consider
Witch
that.
was fake,
Yeah.
but they took, steps to make it look as real as possible. So I mean, and I've done things like I said, the Harry Potter video and other stuff where it's like the guise of it trying to be real. And I know the steps that I go to make it feel more real, so that when people start picking it apart, there's less threads for them to pull on. So yeah, I'm so torn. The creative side of me versus the side that's like, oh yeah, that's clearly some crazy kids that did stupid stuff in their youth. But yeah, I'm hoping that at some point someone comes forward and they've ID this person, or at least give some clues to who they were, or if this actually happened or not. But I don't know. Time will tell.
Yeah. And time will tell. That's a good way to say it. And the mystery of this video, I think, keeps going because so much of it is just people sharing thoughts or stories online where we don't have anything concrete. And there's no one that's like pulling up an old yearbook, which people have looked for yearbooks for this guy, or like here's a newspaper clipping when he won the a cappella singing contest in 5th grade or whatever. It's like there's none of those things that have come forward to prove this, or someone just being like, look, it's me, look at my face, obviously I'm older, but like it's me, I still have my stutter, and it was something I was doing with friends or whatever. Like nothing has come out. And maybe this will just become more popular. And like you said, if it was a Netflix doc, there'd be people being like, oh wait, it's Joe across the hall.
Yeah. And again, like I think it would take a lot of deep research of going through the yearbooks, because these don't seem like the kids that were in extracurricular activities. So you'd have to just find their photo of them in the book. Because I don't think they're going to be in
grave
a lot
robbing club. Didn't your high school have a grave robbing club? Yeah.
And so yeah, I think like maybe as more things get digitized, and again with some sort of use of AI, whether it's a more advanced version of a Google reverse image search, maybe there's some way for them to track down and cross-reference. But a lot of that stuff's not digitized and probably doesn't have a reason to be. Although I know when I was doing all my, Italian heritage research for my dual citizenship, like Ancestry.com has way more like information upload to it now than it did like years ago when it first launched. And I went on there trying to find family stuff and there was zero. And then it's got all these tools that auto find people and link stuff. So it's like maybe there's some sort of way. Also, my other question is, if it's real, I wonder where those bones ended up today. Like those kids, like did they sell them? Is it in someone's basement? Did they just toss them in the garbage because they didn't want to get caught? He talked about, like you said, making jewelry or like putting a candle on one to sell it as a display item. Does someone have this exact skull at their house thinking it's maybe fake, but it's actually real? Not to mention, I mean, people do collect like real bones and skulls and stuff. Like I've seen real shrunken heads at one of our mutual friends' dad house. Like well, there was like a collection of shrunken heads that were actually real. So like this stuff is, potentially traded, whether it's on the open market or black market. I don't know. This is where the story, like the motivate, like we talked about motivation earlier. Let me start that clean because we have that break. So we talked about motivation earlier of like, why did they do this? Why did they make this video? And in the video, they're talking about how it's sort of a guide to get bones to sell them to someone else for profit. Now, again, going back to my research about how it wasn't until like the mid 80s, and even then it still transitioned later, depending on laws in the UK and everything, that real skeletons were more readily available and cheaper to get than the synthetic fake ones, just because of the process of making those. So to me, there's not really a premium for having a grave robbed skull. Like maybe the jewelry the person was wearing, I understand grave robbing for those things, but for the actual bones, when it's cheaper to get a real skull than a fake skull, what's the benefit of going through all that trouble of risk getting caught and going to jail to get something that's not as in demand? Like as, let's say if they were breaking into a store to steal a fake skull at that time. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling, but I feel like the value proposition that they're talking about at this era in like the early 90s is just not there because real skulls were too readily available in the classroom, and they didn't have the premium that they would say now when now that stuff's illegal. I don't know. Just something doesn't track.
And that's why I think I'm on this. I think they grave robbed because they're crazy kids, but I think the video and the details are a hoax. And that's one of the many reasons I think that, because you're kids in a period of time where if there is a black market for stolen bones, how the hell are you finding that? There's no,
Yeah,
there's no like, there's
that's
no
a
internet.
valid point.
There's no like, he talks about a magic shop, but it's like, how many magic shops can you walk into with a dirty skull and be like, hey, give me $500 for this?
It's got to
like,
be magic. He must be talking about magic with a K, not a C, because I grew up like doing all kinds of magic and card tricks, and our magic shop would not be the place I would take a skull to.
That's my point. I mean? That's my point. Yeah.
So unless they have like some, occult magic shop, but there was always like, that then, weird like, older person or someone knew an older brother that had connections to weird stuff. And again, I feel like there's probably an easier way to get to that weird underbelly being in New York at that era. And these kids seem like they might have that weird older brother, or just that Van Wilder guy who's too old to be hanging out with the younger kids that like buys them beer or cigarettes or something. There's going to be someone, a guy that knows a guy. It's not totally out of the realm of possibility, but yeah, it's a good point of like, where are they doing that enough to just keep doing this, or was it a one or two off thing that they just did? Yeah. I don't know.
There you go. We solved it. Obviously,
we solved it.
We know who did it.
Case
we
closed.
know if it was real or not. Case closed. No, the mystery goes on, and that's part of the fun of these things. And thank you, Bill. We talked for a long time about this. There are more details to this story. I will have links in my show notes. Also, you can just Google it. There are a million different rabbit holes you can go down. We will never have enough time to go into all the theories or details of it.
Never.
And you can also watch the video. There's a few different copies of it on YouTube, and people analyzing it on YouTube and things like that. So check it out if you like weird things. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say one thing. Before we go, I just want to, so sadly, my wife's best friend, Sarah Lovett, passed away recently. She was actually a guest on your podcast. So I just want to, as a way to sort of, dedicate this episode to her, I want, if people can go back and listen to that episode, it was called, I'm probably going to say this wrong, Karl Grabman, the Butchering Berlin Beggar. So please just go and listen to that. Also, Sarah was a host of her own podcast, which was ABCs of was it death or murder or true crime? ABCs of true crime.
I'll give some links.
But go back and listen to the Study of Strange episode with her. She was an amazing person, and sadly we lost her. But she lives on in the world of true crime
in audio
podcastery.
form. Yeah, she does. No, she's a wonderful person. I loved her podcast, and she was a great guest. And it's Karl Grossman, just to clarify. But
Grossman. Okay, I don't know German. I'm just seeing with a B, but that's right, because like Straub. Okay, yeah.
It's the letter we don't have in English. Yeah. So sometimes in English, I think you spell with two S's or something like that.
Okay.
But
Good to know.
No. Thank you for bringing that up, and I appreciate that. And I will provide links to all of those things. And again, check out Geek Garage as well.
Yeah,
with Bill, and
maybe we'll do an episode where we try to recreate the skull from this video. Just kidding. That's probably not in our wheelhouse, but that'd be a funny one.
That actually would be pretty cool. That would be cool, especially if this becomes like a bigger thing online. You should do that. Well, cool. Thank you so much.
Bill.
No problem. No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna. This is like, I forgot to mention earlier. Did you see that someone made a sequel short film of the? Oh yeah, someone recently made Grave Robbing for Morons 2. It's not.
Oh, I did see that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a guy sitting by a fireplace, right?
Yeah.
It
sounds like it's supposed to be like him interviewing the guy years later.
Yeah,
but,
and it's not. It's definitely.
You can
fake,
cut all this.
right.
I was just thinking like if we wanted to do a pickup to talk about that, but it's probably not.
I'm going to keep that in because I'm sure I'm going to get a message of someone be like, no, but there's a second one with an interview. No, there is, and it's fake. It's not him. But I do think it's fun that people did that.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Bill. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, no problem. Talk to you soon.
You've just listened to A Study of Strange. Consider helping us keep the lantern lit, illuminating the unexplained, by subscribing to our Substack. Just head to the support tab at astudyofstrange.com. Until next time, stay curious and stay strange.